All right, so my name's Aidan Mills. I'm the CEO of Northstar Clean Technologies, and I know that a lot of the kind of investors today will be a number of the CEOs that will be coming on will be kind of mining guys, and I'm not going to throw them under the bus, but this is a little bit different because I'm going to talk about not only am I going to talk about a clean technology, but this technology is actually ready to deliver today. This is not, you don't have to look at me. So for the last 3 years, and kind of a relationship with Arlen and the Kin guys, I've been waving my arms and promising that we're going to deliver the first commercial facility here in Calgary, and now we are actually doing that. So this is a story that is right at the pivot point. And so I'll talk you through what we're up to, which hopefully will get some of you pretty excited. All right, so Northstar Clean Tech, we're the guys that are taking asphalt shingle tiles, either from manufacturers or from roofs, and splitting it up into the individual component parts. So a shingle tile is about 50% sand, about 25% fiber. Older tiles, the fiber is paper. Newer tiles, it's fiberglass, and 25% asphalt. We built a pilot plant out in Vancouver, so in Delta. And so that's where we kind of proved all the technology, etc. And now we're building our first commercial facility here in Calgary. Look, a little bit about myself. As you can tell by the accent, I'm not actually from Calgary. I'm from Belfast originally in Northern Ireland. Joined BP, worked for BP for nearly 19 years. Started off in engineering and operations. Moved on to the BP High Potential Scheme and went into commercial. So did some trading and worked for gas trading in the UK. Then came across to Chicago, ran North and South America and origination for the oil business there, and then came up to run gas trading here in Calgary. So my wife's a teacher. This lots of people have heard this story, but my wife's a teacher, and when we moved, when our oldest son hit 11, the life plan was, okay, we need to stop and educate our kids in one place. As I always say, we had the opportunity to outsource our children to boarding school in the UK, but decided not to do that. And so we stayed in Calgary, and I left BP and joined Husky. Was there for nearly 5 years before going to Goldman. I was the MD for North America, co-head for commodity sales, and then into Meg back in the oil industry. So I joined Northstar about 3 years ago, and one of the reasons that I joined was not only did this look like a very interesting, and kind of my job has been to commercialize the technology, and we'll kind of go through what we've done over the last 3 years in a little while. But really important to me were the numbers. Obviously, I haven't been a marketing and trading guy, and because I joined because I didn't really believe them, to be honest. So the the amount of shingles going into landfill across North America is 16.5 million tons per year. So that's more than 20 million barrels of oil. So sort of equivalent to the barrel of oil equivalent of US production per day. Every going in 1st of January pours right into landfill in North America. And this was a staggering figure to me. And the other thing that was really interesting was that Northstar had developed a technology that nobody else had done. So some people, if you Google recycled asphalt shingle, there's probably 1 million tons to 1.5 million tons that is going back into roads. So you can take the shingles, grind them up, and put them into roads. But that's banned across a lot of provinces. It's banned across a lot of states, and states that are permissive, it's kind of 2 to 3%, because it's really difficult to pick that kind of ground up shingle up and really determine the quality. What we do is we split it up into the individual component parts. So out of our facility comes the sand, the fiberglass, and the asphalt. And the asphalt is absolutely the most critical thing. And so that's a really important part with respect to what's happening in the industry. And like 5 or 10 years ago, people really weren't that bothered about what was going into landfill. And now, of course, they are. Clean Cities Acts are trying to divert as much stuff away from landfill as they can. And this is really, really easy to divert. It's not like when you've demoed a house and you're having to pick out wood or glass or brick or whatever. Shingles come off first. Really, really, really simple. And the industry, so a couple of years ago, came out with, and look, I always think of this as it's a bit like the carbon neutral statement that an oil company would come out with, but the industry has come out with the kind of strategy to say they want to divert 50% of all shingles going to landfill by 2035 and 100% by 2050, which is insane if you think about it. So one of our facilities, just to kind of give you a number, I'll remind you of this at the end as well. But just to kind of give you a kind of an orientation, if we build a base case facility, so i.e. a facility that runs just day shift, not night shift, it will reprocess 40,000 tons of shingles per year. So that's what it would divert away from landfill. If you take that 16.5 million ton figure, and you think by 2050, we would have to build 400 Northstar facilities across North America. So that's why this is literally like the Tim Hortons of shingle recycling. We can build one of these in each one of those cities, or two or three in each one of the cities that have a shingle diversion requirement. So the economics for this are pretty strong. This is a manufacturing story with a green upside. The asphalt that comes out of our facility is the lowest carbon asphalt in North America. And so the real benefit for that is for multi-billion-dollar companies who are trying to pull their carbon footprint down. This is not about the carbon credits that we get. So the way that we kind of think about this is about 35% of the revenue comes from tipping fees. So in Calgary, when you bring a ton of shingles to landfill, you have to pay a tipping fee, $115 a ton. If you bowl up to a Northstar facility, we will discount that tipping fee to make sure you kind of come to us rather than going to landfill, but that's where we get the revenue. So it's the first time in my oil and gas career that I've been paid for my feedstock, which is fantastic. The other 65% is the products that come out the back end, of which the biggest and most valuable, of course, is the most valuable is the liquid asphalt. So 95% of the value of the back end. So if you think about this as a business model, so this is exposed to oil price with respect to the asphalt price, of course, at the back end is in general in our contracts indexed to an asphalt price, which is of course linked to the oil price. And so our kind of revenue streams are obviously so the tipping fee in the front end, the revenue we get from asphalt, the revenue we get from sand, the revenue we get from fiber. And the fifth is, so this has a 60% lower carbon footprint in the base case, which is important. So that will generate, or we expect that to generate carbon credits. But what we need to do, of course, is build a facility, do the 18 months of the measurement, establish the criteria that it gets measured against, etc. So we have zeroed that out. When I show you the economics later, we've zeroed that out in the economics. It's not included in our economic model because it was super important for me, I think, when we started this to say, look, again, this is a manufacturing model with great green upside than necessarily something that needed $100 from a carbon perspective to actually make this work. This works without carbon credits, and carbon credits provide the upside. So I'll not go through this in much detail, but the IP is strong. So we've got patents established in the US, follow-ons to go, same in Canada, and we're in the application phase for the international patents, so well protected. And then let's talk about Calgary. So the pilot facility was run in Delta, near Vancouver. And so what we did there was we ran unit by unit, and we brought in manufacturers of some of the specific units, but also we worked with our partners. So the two major partners we have are, for an offtake perspective, are McAsphalt. That's Colas. They're a Canadian sub of Colas, the multi-billion-dollar global asphalt company, and then Tamco, who are a major shingle manufacturer out of the US. So our asphalt can go into three things. So it can go into roads, it can go into paving, and it can go into flat roofing. So as an investor, one of the things that's always interesting about clean tech is, has the R&D been done? Who are the partners? Who's looked at this? Who's done the technical due diligence? So all the R&D for roads has been done by McAsphalt, one of the leading road builders in North America, and obviously part of Colas. And their R&D was done not only here, but in their labs in France as well. TAMCO, significant US shingle manufacturer, have done exactly the same thing. So both of those companies have proven that this asphalt that we make can go into the respective markets. So the R&D is done, which is great from an investor perspective, because you don't have to ask me if it works. You can ask these guys if it works. And the other thing that often comes up in green technologies is, have you got any feedstock supply and how have you secured that? What we do here in Calgary, we've got ICO, the shingle manufacturer. We get their manufactured waste. And we have Eco Recycling, who are a major industrial collector on the recycling side. And so that's the way that we think about any of these facilities that we build, is where's the feedstock going to come from, and and what supports the offtake. The offtake for Calgary is a 5-year offtake with McAsphalt, and there's also a price floor in there, above cash flow break even, and the pricing above that is indexed to asphalt price, so market-based pricing all the way. TAMCO similarly market-based pricing with a price floor for the US facilities. And TAMCO came in as a strategic investor, so they invested 10 million in Northstar, 6.4 million US last year as a pref share 1-to-1, and that was done at almost a 100% premium to the stock price of the day. So like huge support from them. They were also were a leading when we did the converts at the beginning of this year. They were a lead order for that at 30%, which is even higher than the percentage that they owned of the company. And Calgary's fully funded, so the fundings come from that equity from TAMCO, it's come from BDC, and it's come from Emissions Reduction Alberta. And I'll talk a little bit about how non-dilutive everything is in a minute. But yeah, so BDC have come in, and we got over $7 million from the Alberta government. Infinitely non-dilutive, of course, because it's non-repayable, and again, huge government support. And look, this is the Calgary facility, so we're actually building it now. So this will be built by early Q1, and then we'll commission it then, and we expect this to be at full operating capacity by the end of Q2. You can see in the second picture the shingle piles. So if you look at the top left, that's the ICO manufactured waste. If you look at the top right, that's the waste that comes off tear-offs from roofs, and you can see major equipment arriving, and also concrete pouring. And if you go on our website, what we're going to do is we're going to be doing a series on the build, and the first video got released, PR'd and released yesterday. And so if you want to see how one of these things comes together, that's now going to be live, well, not live, but that's going to be recorded, and we'll be putting videos out on the website, and fairly repeatedly as we go here to present where we're going with the build. So let's talk quickly about the economics. So a base case plant. So Calgary, kind of over $7.5 million to build. But the base case plants, we believe, will be and again, a base case plant running 40,000 tons per year. That will cost about $15 million to build. With the facilities that follow on from Calgary, of course, has got the first engineering in it, etc. So that's why it's a higher cost to build the first one. The 10,000 foot economics that I use is it should kick out about $10 million a year of revenue and about $5 million a year of EBITDA. And that is the base case. And so when I keep on using the word base case, that's a plant that gets 40,000 tons per year, and we run it 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. The only difference between that and a 24/7 facility is the availability of feedstock. So the eco recycling deal in Calgary, they have a landfill which has got only shingles in it, and so they are looking at the potential to empty that landfill, and that could enable Calgary essentially to go to a 24/7 facility. The only difference that you need is feedstock. The capex does not change. And so that can give us a 2x of these numbers. So it would take you to $20 million worth of revenue and $10 million worth of EBITDA. And so this is where I get to the calc for the 10x that I threw out at the beginning. So if you think about where we're going to go next, and so retrofitting the facility in Vancouver would be step number one. Step number two would be the site in Toronto, and step number three would be the facility that's going to supply TAMCO in the US, so the first US facility. So the catalysts that we're going to see, of course, are the building of Calgary, but we're likely to announce the Toronto location, here in Q4. We're likely to announce the US location in Q1. So those are the kind of the future catalysts that are coming. But all of those facilities, Vancouver is 3x Calgary in terms of roofing and shingles going into landfill. Toronto 5x, and the US even higher, because obviously there's like 15 million people in the catchment area close to the TAMCO site. And you can see what we've highlighted is this doesn't stop here. This is a program that can continue to roll out. And you can see we've highlighted potential Northstar locations and right beside the TAMCO locations, because the TAMCO deal is for four facilities. And then, so this talks a little bit in detail about the TAMCO region. You can have a look at that on our slide deck. And then let's talk about what this could actually look like. So again, could be a little bit, CEO arm wavy in terms of the fact that I can say we think we can build 3 plants ourselves per year, and we can probably build 3 or license 3 facilities once we get the Tim Hortons model up and running. But just to align you with what this looks like is, if you look at 2030, that is 23 facilities. If you go back to what the industry wants, the strategy statement from ARMA, so as I say, that's like Owens Corning, TAMCO, lots of the big guys in the industry, they want 200 facilities by 2035. So I mean, as I always say, we're pretty good, but that's a fairly big number, and that's really important because that's the size and the scope of this industry. I'll not talk about CVW, but that was one of the deals that we did fairly recently. But I will talk quickly about where we've come from in the last 3 years, and since I've been presenting with Arlen and the team here. So as I said, we have the strategic offtake customers, we have strategic investors, we have feedstock supply, and this is versus where we were in July 2021. And we have the US expansion options. Now we've got non-dilutive funding from debt, we've got non-dilutive funding from the government, and the Calgary facility is fully funded. If you look at our funding, including the CVW raise that we did about 6 weeks ago, we're fully funded through to the end of 2025 to both build Calgary and start all the development work, permitting, et cetera, on the other facilities. We've de-risked the technology with all the work that we did at the pilot plant. We've got the IP in place, and as I said, the environmental benefits mean this is the lowest asphalt price lowest asphalt carbon content in North America. Post money after the IPO in July, the equity valuation was $35 million, and now it's pretty much the same. It's at 30 million. And so that's where we totally believe we're at the tipping point with all of this in place and the first plant just about to be built. That's and back to this slide, as I talk about, this isn't a CEO who's telling you there's a 10x because we can just, because we believe it, but those 4 plants, all with an EBITDA of 10 million per year, and a multiple, so 40 million of EBITDA, take off 5 for running Northstar, that's 35 million bucks, and a 10x, which in this industry is relatively common. That's the 10x to get you versus this number now. And then lastly, I'll not go through this in detail, but we have raised since I've joined, or as I joined with the IPO, was 12.2 million. We've raised 67 million bucks since 2021, which, as you know, in this market has been a tough market. And 30 of that has been non-dilutive. And of the stuff that was dilutive, the TAMCO was done at 100% times the stock price. So all of that to say, this has been, a really strong performance with respect to fundraising, and I think we're in a great position, looking at where we are for through the Calgary build and fully funded to the end of 2025. So I think the key messages are, the market is huge. We've got a patented process here. The first commercial facility is literally being built. The economics are barnstorming for the rollout. The plan is to do 4 facilities by the end of 2026, and we believe it's significantly undervalued.
Aidan, great job. Again, if you're listening, you got some questions, please use the Q&A. But I'll just fire off a couple here to start. I think one thing investors have had a hard time wrapping their head around is that supply of shingles. Now that you've been doing this for 2 years, what have you learned?
Well, I think the thing that is there's probably 2 big things. Number one, every city is different. So as you can see, the discussion in Delaware, the Eastern US versus Toronto versus Vancouver versus Calgary, each city is different. Sometimes you're going to get shingle supply from municipalities because they have all the shingles coming. Sometimes you have to get shingles from manufacturers because they're close by. Sometimes you're going to have to set up shingles, a shingle collection that's all about the roofers. And sometimes there are like industrial collectors in that region. So here, for example, Eco Recycling, great example, they collect 20,000 tons per year, and we have a deal with them that they divert all of that to us. So whether it's a Waste Management or a GFL or a Republic or whoever, every city is slightly different. So that's the first thing we've learned. The second thing we've learned is, it is a bit build it and they will come. So the Eco Recycling deal only came about because they came to the plant opening because they were interested in what we were doing. And out of that came a 20,000 ton a year deal. So there's a lot of it that says, you have to have your site, you have to have the offtake agreement in place because that's the key of the economics. But ultimately, the launch of the facility generates huge interest in people bringing you shingles.
Mm-hmm. And so how do you evaluate like potential expansion facilities in these municipalities?
I think the way that we think about it is it's a kind of a grid that says when we look. So as I say, let's assume 400 plants across North America to solve this problem. So we evaluate a city based on tipping fee versus asphalt price. So I'll give you a really good example. I always throw Mississippi under the bus, but so like I think the tipping fee in Mississippi is like $15 a ton, right? 15 US a ton, and it's right beside the US Gulf Coast, so it's likely to have a pretty low. It'll have probably the lowest asphalt price. Seattle is $175 US per short ton, and it's got one of the highest asphalt prices because it's in the Pacific Northwest and the transport's higher, et cetera, et cetera. So not that I'm telling you we're going to Seattle and not Mississippi, but with the evaluation, it enables you to kind of focus in on where the best economics are.
So that's a very simple equation just to look at initially.
Yeah, 35% of our revenue comes from tipping fee, and 60 whatever 70% comes from the asphalt price. So like it's really simple.
Yeah. Do you see higher tipping fees more along the West Coast? Is that like a West Coast thing?
Yeah, but also, so if you look at tipping fees in the US, you'd have West Coast, you'd also have Boston, some of the stuff on the East Coast as well. If you look at blue states in general, the tipping fee will be somewhat higher than red states in general.
Yeah. We got a question from someone here. Toronto, what are your plans in Toronto? We haven't seen much news out of Toronto, he says.
So we've been doing all the work on development there with respect to supply and offtake and location, and so I expect to be able to announce that in sometime here in Q4.
Yeah. Okay. Questionable amount raised by Northstar, but I think you said that earlier. You've raised 30 million.
So we've raised 67 million. Since 67 million. The IPO was done at 12. The IPO was 12 and was 12.2. We've raised 55 million since I've taken over here, and of that, 30 is non-dilutive. So and that is BDC, the CVW royalty deal, and emissions reduction Alberta. So yeah, of the 55 that I've raised, 30 was non-dilutive.
Okay, we got 2 minutes, and two quick questions. How long does it take you to build a facility from when you start breaking ground?
So it takes about 4 months to 5 months to build it, and probably 1 month to commission it. But of course, it takes about 18 months to permit it. So if we decide we're going to build a plant in Dallas tomorrow, once you've got your site, it takes about 18 months. So from the minute you get your site to the time where it's producing, it's about a couple of years.
Do you start buying your long lead items? Like, when do you start buying long lead items? Once you get a permit?
Yeah, so I mean, we expect to buy the long lead items for the 2026 plants probably in the middle of next year. So we would place the deposits. It's really deposit to save you manufacturing space.
Yeah.
So about 6 months, but once, I mean, if you're going to build 3 facilities and you don't quite know exactly where they are, it doesn't really matter. You still need three pieces of kit, so you would still do your long lead item.
Right on. Awesome, Aidan, great job. Your stock's been trading a lot better lately, which is nice because obviously you got that money from CVW, so people see, you're fully financed here for this Calgary build. So congratulations. I know how hard you've worked on this. And, you've certainly pulled off some deals that, I think other people would be very envious of. So congratulations. Well done. Let's to future success on this. That'd be awesome.
I'm looking forward to it. I think thanks for the support from you guys as well. I mean, I think we're in a brilliant place. We're fully funded. We don't have to raise money. We've got a site that's just about to complete and start commissioning, and we'll be ripping this by the middle of next year with 3 to come in 26. So yeah, I'm very excited about the future here.
Okay, right on. Thanks, Aidan.
All right, man. Cheers.